start. Well, hello to everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this AIAF workshop. My name is Ronan David. I'm the Chief Editor of Football Legal. And as a partner of the AIAF, we are very proud to host this AIAF workshop. We have a great lineup of speakers with Emilio GARCIA SILVERO and Erika FERREIRA from FIFA. And of course, we have great lawyers from AIAF too. Just a technical point, you are able to ask your questions directly in the Zoom application. You can use the Q&A section of Zoom. And then at the end of each topic, the speakers will address some of the questions, not all of them, I guess, because we have more than 300 people registered today. I will give you the floor and you will be put on the screen so you can directly ask your questions to the speakers. So please get ready to be on the screen. I now give the floor to Patricia MOYERSOEN, who is the AIAF president, for a few opening words. I thank you once again for being with us, and I hope you enjoy this AIAF workshop. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to have you all together in this first AIAF workshop for the year 2021. First of all, I would like to wish you all a very happy new year, even if we know that we had a terrible year last year, that we couldn't gather all together physically. Nevertheless, we want to keep linked all together and to continue to work together. So a few words to explain what is AIAF. AIAF is a non-profit organization gathering more than 110 lawyers specialized in football law. We are working as a network, but our main purpose is to share our experience, to work on a legal issue altogether with our partner, who you may know, Football Legal. We also have the objective to participate actively in the improvement of all legal environment of football. We are all passionate by football law, by football also, most of us. But for this purpose, we organize every year a congress and inviting all the stakeholders of the international football and governance football. We, unfortunately, last year, we planned to have our congress in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. Of course, we couldn't hold this congress, but we start to have webinars. Last year we had 2 webinars, 2 in English, 2 in Spanish, and it was successful. And this year we decided to start by not exactly webinar, but workshop. Why workshop? Because we want in AIAF, we want to have a very interactive debating with the main stakeholders, and today debating with FIFA. This is for us a great opportunity to learn, to share our experience, and to talk with our dear friends Emilio GARCIA SILVERO and Erika FERREIRA, who accepted our invitation to talk about these two very interesting topics, coaches and female players. We have 3 AIAF members today. Emin OZKURT from Turkey, who will moderate our debate. Couse from England, who will work on the female players topic, and Rogrido on the coach new regulation. So I give the floor to Emin if you want to say some words, and thank you very much, Emilio and Erika, being with us. I know that Emilio was with us 2 weeks ago in the Spanish session, which was very successful. We are lucky to have him for twice a week with us, with the AIAF members and all our attendees. So thank you all and enjoy this workshop. Emin, you have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you, Patricia. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the workshop of AIAF on FIFA's new rules for coaches and female players. It's an honor to have the opportunity to address such a distinguished audience. I see that we are over 130 as participants. Let me introduce myself at first. My name is Emin OZKURT. I'm an independent legal and sport consultant based in Istanbul, and currently an arbitrator at the Court of Arbitration for Sport for several years now. I am also one of the 9 founding arbitrators at the newly created EuroLeague arbitration panel, namely as EuroLeague Basketball Dispute Resolution Chamber based in Lugano, Switzerland. And I am a proud member of the Board of Directors at the AIAF and will be happy to moderate this workshop. We are all here because of one common passion, which is football. And as it is once said by Liverpool legend Billy Shankly, some people believe football is a matter of life and death. I am very disappointed with that attitude. I can assure you it is much more important than that, says Billy Shankly. And I believe this sentence eloquently demonstrates our dedication to the beautiful game, and I believe many of us share the same feelings here. Well, the focus of this workshop is to bring up to date on the latest new rules for coaches and female players, which was published on FIFA's website recently. The idea of the workshop is indeed is a discussion, and I think that what was done on Tuesday during the Spanish session, a presentation by FIFA of the new provisions, and then the comments, questions of the AIAF speakers and our participants worked out very well. On the other hand, I think it is important to leave more room for questions from the audience, as this is an important feature of AIAF events. I also think that questions should be asked at the end of each topic, so feel free to insert your questions at the Q&A section below. As I said, we have a great lineup of speakers at this workshop. We have Emilio GARCIA SILVERO, the legal director of FIFA. Welcome, Emilio. And again, from FIFA, we have Erika MONTEMOR FERREIRA, head of player status at FIFA. And Erika is a Brazilian lawyer specialized in sports law. She has worked in Brazil and Spain as a lawyer, dealt with disciplinary and financial fair play matters in UEFA, and is currently the head of FIFA Player Status Department, responsible for the resolution of contractual disputes, training compensation, international transfer-related matters, and protection of minors. Also, we have 2 prominent sports lawyers of AIAF, Carol Couse from UK. Carol is a partner in the sports team at Mills & Reeve, LLP, with extensive in-house and private practice experience of dealing with sports regulatory matters, whether content use or non-content use, including in respect of all football-related legal issues. Also, we have Rogrido Garcia Lucas, from Spain, AIAF member as well. Rodrigo is a good friend and one of the most prominent sports lawyers in Spain. So without taking much of their time, at this juncture, I will leave the floor to Emilio Garcia Silverio for his presentation. Emilio, it's great to have you. Please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Emin. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. I see some familiar names, no faces, but at least names coming from all around the world, from Chile to Japan. So again, I cannot say hello to all the colleagues, but welcome. I hope that you are all okay, had a nice Christmas break. So I would like to start by thanking, of course, Patricia and Roland for the invitation. Erika and I, we are super happy, very happy to be here with all of you. It's also a great pleasure to share the stage, the online stage, with Emin, with my friend Rogrido, and of course with Carol. So the idea of this session, as Patricia has just highlighted, is to introduce a little bit the new regulations on coaches, Annex 8 of the new RSTP, and also the minimum working conditions for female players that we included in the RSTP. Both went into force as from 1st January 2020. So the idea is to give a very short presentation about two topics. First, a kind of introduction, what we are doing in terms of the transfer and reform system. And then, you know, Erika will address coaches, and I will try to introduce the fundamental aspects related to the minimum working conditions for female players. As Patricia said, it has been a pleasure to share the stage with our Latin, South American, Central American friends 2 days ago. Today with no South American friends, so I'm very close to the hat trick. So, you know, this week with the AIAF, but in any case, Erika and I, we are super happy to be with all of you. So if Roland allows me, I will share my screen, try to include my PowerPoint. It's just a question of a few seconds.
Yes.
Just a moment.
Yes.
We did it on Tuesday, yeah?
You cannot do it, Emilio?
No problem. No problem at all. We have time. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, you know, I'm Spanish. Erika is Brazilian. So it's in Brazil. So, you know, we go bed at midnight, 1 o'clock a.m. So no worries. So we are fine. And Carol, you know, she speaks perfect Spanish. You know, she understands the culture. Emin is in Istanbul. So what else? So.
I'm sorry, just dealing with this technical thing.
The message is host disable participant screen sharing. So maybe there is a feature or something like that that you need to unblock.
Yes.
Because you are the host.
Well, it worked perfectly fine 2 days ago.
Anyway, if for whatever reasons we cannot find the button, you know, I give you 5 minutes to Google it, but for sure you can find this in Google, and I can proceed with the introduction, no?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, no worry.
I'm trying to fix it.
No problem at all. Okay. Well, as I said, this quick presentation is divided in 3 different topics or chapters. The first one is introduction. Second one, coaches. Then we stop. We introduce the Q&A section. Then we go to female players, and then again Q&A. Well, when it comes to the introduction, so why we are changing the RSTP and the transfer system in football. So as you all know very well, so the basis of this transfer reform system is the agreements between the European Union, FIFA and UEFA, and partially FERREIRA, made in 2001. So following the Bosman ruling in December 1995, the international sports federations realized, well, we cannot live in our own world. We need to respect the rules. We need to be aligned with EU law. We need to be aligned with national law. So let's do something. So if you remember, until 2001, the football players were almost, and I can say this publicly, slaves. No? So, the retain system work very well at international level, thanks to the old FIFA transfer regulations. But, Bosman and then the agreements in 2001, FIFA approved the new approach into the transfer regulations. So FIFA approved these regulations at the FIFA Congress in Buenos Aires. And at that time, the objectives of these regulations were to protect minors, to protect contractual stability, to promote training of young players throughout the solidarity mechanism and training compensation, and also something highly relevant, and I think that it worked very well during the last 20 years, to set up this dispute resolution chamber that is a nice FIFA internal body composed by representatives from clubs and players, and we try to solve disputes all around the world. These were more or less the 3-4 objectives at that time, but of course the world and football has changed a lot since then. You only need to look at the FIFA reports, you only need to look at the reality. So where were you in 2001? I still can't remember, so younger, in better condition, but football has changed a lot. So, if you look at the FIFA reports concerning transfers, so in 2010, we were dealing with 10,000 transfers. Right now, it's more or less the double. So we were dealing with, $2 billion. Now it's almost $8 billion. So, the world of football has changed, and that's why since 2016, when the new FIFA president was elected here in Zurich in February 2016, Mr. Gianni Infantino, one of the first things that he proposed was, well, we need to sit all together and we need to look at the transfer system and see if we can change, amend, make a revolution, but within a certain context. And this is what we are doing since then. In 2017, FIFA set up the Football Stakeholders Committee. For the first time, all the football stakeholders are sitting on the same table. So representatives from clubs, representatives from leagues, representatives, of course, for the player unions, in this case, FIPRO. We sit all together very often, and we do things. Particularly, we are trying to amend, to a certain extent, the transfer system. So the project started in 2007, 2008. So more or less the idea of these packages. So we approved the first package, then more focus on protecting players, salaries, etc., etc., etc. On the second package with the clearinghouse, agents, and some other topics. And now we are working on the third package that we have the intention to announce in 2021, 2022. So obviously the impact of COVID-19 2020 was huge for us, but we are doing everything, all together. So here on the slides, I hope that we can see then the slides. So if you look at and look back at the transfer regulations, FIFA transfer regulations, I used to say that until 2001, FIFA imposed the rules. From 2001 until 2016-17, FIFA opened a sort of consultation. We still approve the rules, but of course we retain the final word. But since 2017, 2018, the FIFA transfer regulations, the so-called regulations on the status and transfer of players, these regulations are more a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, rather than FIFA rules. Because right now, it's, thank God, I would say, it's really impossible for us to amend the transfer regulations without the agreement with FIPRO, without the agreement of ECA, the agreement of the leagues, the clubs, the confederations, and the national associations. Of course, it takes more time, but I tell you, the debates and the topics and the level is definitely higher, because there are some other colleagues involved, and we can prepare better rules, better ideas. And what we are going to present today is a clear example. So I know that we used to refer to the FIFA rules and the new FIFA regulations, but to tell you the truth, these are, of course, regulations passed by the FIFA Council, but those who are behind these regulations are not only FIFA or the FIFA administration or Ornella or Erika or James, me, Marco, the team. You know, those who are behind these regulations are also FIPRO, the clubs, the leagues, and the confederations. And that's the only way to move forward right now. We are very happy with this course of action, and because we think that this is the right way to do. We do things almost by consensus. Of course, sometimes, you know, we have certain discrepancies, but again, as from 2017, we are all working together, trying to adjust, amend, but definitely improve the transfer system. Today, we are going to speak about the Annex 8 of the FIFA transfer regulations, the new regulations on coaches, as I said, and then we move to the new regulations, the minimum labor conditions for female players. So great pleasure to give the floor to my friend, first friend, and then colleague Erika MONTEMOR, in order to introduce the, now I can share my screen. Thank you very much, Roland. Perfect timing. So I think that you see the screen. So big screen, just give me 2 seconds. Okay, that's coaches, presenter view. Okay, let's start with coaches, Erika. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good evening for you, depending where you are. First of all, I want to thank AIAF and Football Law for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be here. I hope as well that 2021 is different and we can actually meet again in person. And it's a pleasure to be here as well with sharing the screen with such important lawyers and experienced people, and of course with Emilio, my boss and my dear friend. So to start with coaches, I like to say that we need to keep in mind that of course it's not everything new because coaches are already protected and we're already within the scope and competence of the Player Status Committee. But I guess we should keep in mind here that although there was not specific provisions, already Article 6 of the procedural rules included football coaches as parties to appear before the deciding bodies, and also Article 22C already specified the competence of the Player Status Committee for employment-related disputes involving clubs or national associations and football coaches, of course, with international dimension. But clearly the RSTP did not directly apply to coaches. And basically it was the jurisprudence of the Player Status Committee, the PSC, that had already confirmed the principle of contractual stability within the framework of organized football that also apply to football coaches. But again, the important here is that now it was decided, as Emilio fully explained, with the agreement of the stakeholders and the involvement of the stakeholders in the discussion, that it was about time to actually have specific regulation and legal framework for coaches. So in other words, is to say that the protection of coaches already existed, but now they are better protected with a dedicated and robust regulatory framework. It's also to understand why was this done. So as I said, not only within the reform system, but I think also within the line that I think we all agree that FIFA is a completely different place now, and with Emilio, many things have changed and led to change with transparency, with more information. And I think also seeing what happened with minors is to make sure that the jurisprudence is not only a jurisprudence, but it also is within a framework and clarity and providing legal certainty for everybody. So the main objectives of these changes are actually this, to provide a minimum regulatory framework with a higher degree of legal certainty to all the parties involved. specifically in this case for the employment relationship between coaches and clubs or national association. Also, it is to facilitate the work of the relevant deciding body, so in this case, the Player Status Committee. But I think it's also responding to the wishes and complaints of lawyers and parties, putting a clear regulatory framework and giving more transparency to the process of the deciding of cases and also the jurisprudence. So now to the next one, it's just important to keep in mind what has changed in the RSTP. So first of all, we have a new definition. We're going to go through that later, but to say that we have a new definition 28, which explain what is applicable and what does coach means. We also have an amendment to Article 22. Already coaches were already in this, but now it's clearly entitled the coaches to also go to national court. And also an amendment to 22C to clarify the right of a coach to also agree within the contract the possibility, the jurisprudence and the competence of National Dispute Resolution Chamber. And then finally, we have a whole new annex, the Annex 8, which basically mirror the principles that already existed for players, but now, of course, with the specificities of the relationship with coaches. Emilio, we can go to the next slide, please. So first of all, I'll say that this new annex already in the scope explained that it will only apply to professional coaches, which means coaches who are paid more for coaching activity than expenses they effectively incur. And also that they are employed by a professional club or an association. This was a concern in a discussion with the stakeholders to really explain what did apply to. Here again is very similar to players, that it doesn't matter what the contract says, but actually what is the coach earning to establish whether or not he's a professional. Also, again, not only Annex 8, but in accordance with Article 22C, it's important to keep in mind that obviously we are competent for employment-related disputes involving coaches as long as there is an international dimension. And finally, to clarify that also futsal coaches are covered by the same competence. And finally, if you look just 1 second on the slide, previous slide, to just make sure to understand that Article 1, Paragraph 4 also entails the obligation of national associations to include in their regulations appropriate means to protect the contractual stability also between coaches, clubs, and associations. Then moving ahead, I think one of the most important ones is the definition, definition 28. As I mentioned in the beginning of the RSTP, you have all these definitions to make it clear for the parties. And this is the notion of a coach is limited to football-specific occupations. This is not something new. Again, is already the jurisprudence of the PSC. And in other words, that means that a coach, as per the definition, should be performing duties related to training and selection of football players, as well as to tactical aspects of the game. This is in line with the CAS jurisprudence as well. So it's both the jurisprudence of the PSC and the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Consequently, assistant coaches and goalkeeper fall within the scope of the definition, and any person that is undertaking a football-specific occupation. So here it's important to have this in mind. And again, very similar to players as well, is not so much about what the name of the contract is, but what is the actual specific role of the coach, of the person involved. So you can see that 28, you have first coach, an individual employed in a football-specific occupation, and then you have two options there. But it's very important to keep in mind that it has to be a football-specific occupation, reason why some other employees of the club will not fall under this definition. Also, it's important that here we now have that the parties must formalize the relationship by concluding a written contract. And this contract shall include the essential elements of any employment contract, which is the object of the contract, the parties and rights of, the parties' rights and obligations, the agreed remuneration, of course, the period of duration of this contract, and finally the signatures of each party. Again, it's not something new. It was already valid also for players, and it's important that now it's clear and the written contract is a requirement for also agreements between coaches and clubs and coaches and national associations. It's also important to see that it's similar to players, established the obligation for clubs and associations to apply a minimum degree of diligence before hiring a coach and signing a contract, because the same as for players, it needs to be ensured that the coach is eligible to work and stay in the country, because the validity of the contract between a coach and a club or an association cannot be subject to the grant of a work residence permit or any other requirement of administrative nature. We can go to the next slide, please, Emilio. Then, again, because we want to make sure that we have enough time for questions and discussions, here I'm not going to go through each article, because here it's really, we see that it's a mirror of what already had for players, so the contractual stability, but in this time, really putting the specificities of coaches, and also the fact that one of the parties in this case can be an association, which is different from the employment-related disputes with players. So articles 3 to 6 are provisions regarding contractual stability, and what they wish here is to ensure that parties benefit from a higher degree of legal certainty and legal treatment, and making sure that both lawyers and stakeholders are familiar with the applicable rules. So Article 3, in respect of contracts, so it's really mirroring what we have also for players. Articles 5 and 6 are the termination of contracts with or without just cause. And finally, Article 6, which see the consequence for the natural termination of a contract and how to calculate the compensation. Moving from there, then we have Article 7, which speaks about overdue payables. As you know, in the past, overdue payables will only apply to coaches and players. And this, of course, is largely based on the same system of overdue payables applicable to players, but now adapted to take into account the specificity of coaches and the relationship with clubs and associations. Clearly, clubs and associations must comply with their financial obligations that they contracted in an employment agreement. And the overdue payables concept has proven in practice to be very effective for players, reinforcing the contractual stability and making sure that clubs will comply with their obligations. And for this reason, we now expect the same effect for coaches. And this is the reason why now we're also having overdue payables applicable for coaches here. Finally, we have Article 8, which is regarding the consequence for failure to pay relevant amounts in due time. Here, as you know, currently Article 24 bis applies to coaches only for clubs and players, and really has improved efficiency and compliance with decisions, because now it's no longer needed to go to the disciplinary after having a decision, but already the decisions of the GARCIA and the PSC foresee the consequence of the non-fulfillment of the obligations established by the deciding body. Now the same will apply for coaches, and it's definitely improving the efficiency of the decisions. Basically, these are the changes, and as I said before, they're not everything new. It's mostly putting the jurisprudence in writing, establishing the minimum legal framework, and making sure that the parties have this clarity, legal certainty. So basically, this was the idea, and I guess that's mainly it. I don't know if Emilio has anything to add, but since you asked me to be concise as possible and leave floor to the discussions, I think this gives you a clear overview of the changes. So in the RSTP, in the main body, and also the new Annex 8 applicable to professional coaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you, Erika, for this very precise and to the point presentation. As far as I can see, we have 2 questions from the audience and 1 comment. The first question I will direct to you is from Germany, from Joachim Rhein, who is an AIAF member and a prominent lawyer. Joachim asks that, will athletic coaches fall under the definition, considering that on one side, they are involved in the training, but on the other side, not in the selection and tactical education. What would you say about this?
You're on mute, Erika.
Yeah, as I said before, I think the most important is not actually the name of their activity, but what they are doing. So as long as they have a football-specific related activity, they will be under the scope of the Legislative Committee.
If I may here, and that's something that we also discussed during the last session with our Latin American friends, and it was very recurrent, the scope of the new regulations, and what about the physical trainers and blah, 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 all of this. So here what we did is to try to restrict a little bit the scope of application of the rules, taking inspiration from a well-known Couse award, this 2009-2000 Urtasun versus FIFA, in which the Couse says, well, the regulations apply to those who are really in the sphere of football matters. So, and this is something that we added to the definition. So football-specific occupation. So in principle, of course, and subject to the evaluation of the DRC, Player Status Committee, or CAS, in this case, the Player Status Committee or CAS, in principle, we tend to say that they are not included. So goalkeepers, coaches, of course, assistants, of course, the main coach, they are all included. But at this stage, we think that the physical trainers and all kind of assistants in this area, so they are not fulfilling a specific football, a specific occupation. So in principle, we tend to conclude they are not included. I know that maybe Rodrigo is not happy with this idea, but this is what we discussed within the task force, the working group. And again, we are following here old 2009 old Couse award.
If I may add as well, I think it's important that this question is always raised, and that's why I said you always depend on a specific situation, because we had cases where the name is something, but the actual activity is different. But I think here it's important that we see that technical or team or the coach staff is growing. So a team don't only have not only a coach and assistant coach, but it keeps growing. And we need to make sure that for now, it's limited to the football specific activity.
Thank you, Erika. We have a question from Karangwa Jules, legal officer of Rwanda Football Association. Maybe Ronan can put his question on the share panel, or I can voice it. Ronan?
Well, I'm trying to put him on the screen if Jules is available.
Karangwa Jules.
Mm-hmm.
There he is, I guess.
Hi, Jules. Good afternoon. How are you?
Jules, you are on mute.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hi. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
You can ask your question directly.
Okay. Thank you. I was asking about the mechanism that shall be put in place both on FIFA level and national associations level in order to also include we have the national coaches associations. We have also the coaches associations on a continental, international level. So how are we going to include also their representatives in the deciding bodies, be it in the Dispute Resolution Committee or the Player Status Committee or the National Dispute Resolution Committee, depending on the situation of the country or or the structure of the deciding bodies, or keeping in mind of the principles of equal representation in the deciding bodies for all the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I can start, Erika. I see your face, so you're still cooking the question. Well, on this point, if I may, something that we have already clarified during the Latin American session, and I think that Erika did it a few minutes ago, is it's important to note that this Annex A is not binding at the domestic level. So, the national federations don't need to copy and paste these regulations and to issue regulations at domestic level. It is certain that we have a specific provision in this Article 1, paragraph 4. Each association shall include in its regulations appropriate means to protect contractual stability, but there is a big difference between the minimum conditions for female players that in principle the federations should transport at domestic level, and this Annex A that in principle the principles should be implemented, but it's not exactly the same. Then when it comes to the equal representation at FIFA level, that's something that we are considering in the context of the reform. So as you know, Jules, we are also working on the agents side. So we have some ideas in mind in order to establish a kind of football tribunal with 3 different chambers. So the DRC, the legendary DRC, dealing with clubs and players, and Erika is behind all of this every day. The Player Status Committee, dealing with some of the residual aspects, and here the representatives from coaches can play a role, and then the agents chamber, dealing with the upcoming potential disputes with players. But, it's something that we are still considering, how to integrate coaches within the Player Status Committee. The main problem for us is, if you look at the situation with the football players, we have FIPRO, we love FIPRO, we have an standing and loan agreement with them, so they represent football players all across the world. When it comes to coaches, sometimes we don't know what to do. So, and indeed, when we start working on the project, we ask ourselves what to do. Can we double check with some coaches? So we use some agents coming from coaches. Natalia is connected, so we had some chats with agents representing coaches, with coaches as well. Arsenbergen played an important role, but they are not so organized like FIPRO. So that's why, it's a little bit challenging, So even agents are better organized than coaches. They are divided, 5, 6 different players, agents, associations, but you know what to do with agents. With coaches, it's a little bit different. That's why we are still considering how to set up the Player Status Committee with representatives from coaches. If we understood well your question, Erika.
At this juncture, I would like to give the floor to Rogrido for his input and additions to facilitate.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks very much to the AIAF and to FIFA to be with us and share your experience. It's really, really helpful for lawyers to know by first hand that you share your knowledge, that you give your guidelines, that you are open to open discussions with lawyers, because sometimes if only lawyers gather, but we don't have your guidance, we don't have your view, and we don't find someone to discuss things, we feel kind of lost, and we might sometimes we don't really get into the points and see your view and try to criticize sometimes your rules. So first of all, I think this is a necessary and relevant rule for coaches. But I would say that I think that there are two similarities between how this has been approached for coaches in connection with players. And at the end of the day, I think that maybe for the future, we should all bear in mind that when we talk about coaches, it's not about sometimes, it's about contractual stability, but it's all about when I am going to be fired. So to compare, especially from a, let's say, compensation point of view, severance pay point of view, players with coaches, I don't think it's fair for coaches at the end of the day, because how many dismissals, how many disciplinary dismissals do we see in the world of football for players? I think it's really few cases. While in coaches, it's all about when I'm going to be dismissed. So at the end of the day, I would like to raise if maybe we should take a more protective approach with the compensations for coaches in case of early termination.
I fully agree with you, Rodrigo. You are totally right. But this is a clear example of what we said in the beginning. So two things here. First, we are pushing for these regulations because, we consider this is the right way to do, but not thanks to pressure. So, we don't have a coaches union, pushing FIFA and sending letters, leaking information to the Times. No, you need to do this. So, no pressure. So we are doing this because we think this is the right way to do. They were not protected. We are the football governing body, and we need to help all the stakeholders. But at the same time, as we said in the beginning, there are some other colleagues and friends on the table. So it's not like in the past, FIFA decide about everything, rightly or wrongly. So, we have some other colleagues that they have a word to say. And sometimes it's difficult to start working on something like coaches and then, discussing, for instance, with clubs, say, look, as from now on, we would like to implement this. Well, look, if you are you take the club perspective, is well, I would prefer nothing rather than this. So I tell you, thank God, the colleagues from the European Club Association. So Jose Luis, he's fantastic, open-minded, always trying to help, on trying to move forward. He understood the idea since the beginning, so it's always very easy. But the problem is that, we are coming from nothing to something that, will protect the coaches. Maybe we would love to do something different, but in the beginning and in the end, we need to find a balance. And again, we are really happy to have clever and open-minded colleagues on the table, from FIPRO, Roy, Jose Luis from ECA, Jerome from the World League Forums. It is the only way, because, if you have the typical super aggressive legal director of ECA trying to block everything, well, we don't like, we live better in these conditions. Why? We need coaches regulations, but they were super open-minded and ready to help. And thanks to them, we are here. But of course, I see your point, and you are right. But just to explain why we are doing this, no?
I fully understand. You cannot start with such an aggressive regulation which would grant a coach the full residual value of the contract as a general rule. I think that would be complicated to implement, or at least have the consent of the FIFA stakeholders to do so. I'm just stressing the fact that if we look at this collective as players, we might miss the point about his specific concerns and regulations. For example, in Spain, if a coach is dismissed, he cannot coach in the same division during the rest of the season. In other countries like France, and Patricia, if I'm wrong, please correct me, there's no way you can include any type of unilateral termination clause, both from the club side or the player side, the coach side, in the contract. So at the end of the day, this, in my opinion, leads you to a situation where the coach will need to stick to what this Annex 8 establishes. And there's no way for him to, let's say, protect his contract. So another point that maybe some reflections should be made is when we talk in Article 6.3 that the entitlement to compensation cannot be assigned to a third party. This is something that, in my opinion, might jeopardize, let's say, the right or the possibilities for a coach to leave a club, unilaterally terminate the contract and sign with a new club. Because at the end of the day, if the new club cannot bear the cost associated with the unilateral termination, there's going to be a negative tax, probably a negative tax impact for the coach and for the new club that basically will need to pay the double amount to get a coach. And so I see with these regulations and the way that we draft the damage compensation for the club in case of unilateral termination of the coach, I think, and maybe that was the objective, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but I see that it's going to be difficult for coaches and difficult for new clubs interested in hiring a coach with an existing contract to go and get this coach. Because I would say that the level of uncertainty about what's going to be the cost of doing so, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. So maybe it's not bad. Maybe it's the purpose of the regulation. I just want to highlight that might be the case. While maybe a unilateral termination from the club, unless otherwise agreed on the contract, we are going to know exactly what the economic consequences are. So I'm not fully sure this will please the coaches in general. But the rest of the regulations are highly needed, and I hope that they can develop in the future also on a national level, which I think is going to be also necessary, and I think we should all push for that.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Guys, we have only a few minutes left for the coaches session. And at this juncture, I would like to give word to Espen Auberg. He is the head of legal at the Norwegian Football Association and also a good colleague at Couse as an arbitrator. If you can put Espen, Ronan, it will be very good. Hi, Espen. Can you hear us?
Good afternoon. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Very good. First of all, congratulations to Emilio, Erika, and the rest of the FIFA team for putting these provisions into the RSDP. I think it's about time that coaches' contractual situation are regulated in the RSDP. My question is actually with regards to the wording of Annex 8, Article 6, which suggests that it only applies to contracts that has been terminated without just cause. My question is just, what happens to contracts that have been terminated with just cause? Because in my opinion, the consequences would be the same.
I'm sorry. Hi, Espen. How are you? Good,
How are you,
good to
Erika?
see you. Good, good. Just to
So
understand you.
my question. So I know the wording of Annex 6, Article 8 is based on Article 17 in the RSTP, which has the same wording. But my question is simply, what happens to the coaches who terminate the contract with just cause? Would the consequences?
So I guess here is we were also trying to be consistent with language, so similar to Article 17. But CAS already confirmed our approach that obviously, if a player or a coach terminates the contract with just cause, the consequences of termination without just cause will apply in the sense that the club, or in this case also the national association, will have to compensate the coach, because obviously sometimes it's the coach or the association making it impossible for the coach to continue, and so the coach takes the initiative to terminate the contract with just cause. But of course, Article 6 will also apply to that, similar to Article 17. It's just a matter, I think, of maintaining the same word and making it clear.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for sports lawyers who have been in the game for a few years, it's obvious that that is the rule. It's only for if you are a coach, or if you are a sporting director, or a leading position in a football club, then it would probably be easy for them to understand the rules if the wording also included termination for just cause. So it's only like my question that I put forward. I think that could be an idea to at least look at the heading of the Article 8 and even Article 17 of the RSTP.
Good. Note taken, and as Emilio said, we still have a long way in the reform of the transfer system and improving. And so, yeah, these are the things that definitely we look into the future. And if I may comment on the comment of Rogrido Garcia Lucas as well, is to say regarding the compensation, I think now for coaches, it's actually a great advantage that is clear, that is the same as for the players. If they do not mitigate their damage, finding an employment contract, they will receive the full residual value of the contract, and I think that's really an achievement. And on the opposite, on the fact of your comment on when is the opposite, the coach needs to pay compensation. I think it's very similar with the players, with the fact that then is a case-by-case basis, and you're going to have to analyze what was the investment of the club in coaches. But at the same time, you can keep in mind that there is differences on the fact that there is no joint liability. So actually, sometimes players would say the fact that there's joint liability sometimes hinders a club for hiring me. There's no such consequence in coaches. So there are differences that, are trying to really see the specificity of the relationship between clubs and associations and coaches. And as Emilio said, I think this is a big first step, but obviously there are things that will be developed in time now with the regulatory framework and the jurisprudence and the work of lawyers like challenging and bringing new arguments. So I think it's the first step, but obviously it's not the definitive one.
Okay, thank you very much, Erika.
I mean, if I may, I've seen a nice question from Roy Levy. It is possible to enter into an indefinite contract without time limit with a coach. Article 3 does not suggest it, but Article 2 does not request a defined term. It's a good question. So I've never seen in my life a club manager trying to do this with a coach. So, so from a sporting point of view, I could say that it's too risky to sign an indefinite contract with a coach. But from a technical point of view, it's a nice question. Maybe, I don't know if it is very practical, but again, difficult to see a club manager signing an indefinite contract with a club. Of course, they will love to sign contracts, these kind of contracts with players, with some players, in order to see the retention system back. This is not possible, thank God. So, but in principle, nothing is against this. I think that, you know, the regulations are here, the RSTP and everything, you know, the idea is to protect the short career of players. That's why, you know, the retention system is part of the story, blah, 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 blah. With the coaches, it's different, no? So I think that I don't see why a coach can be heavily affected by signing this indefinite contract. But no, well, it's a good question. Of course, again, the situation is completely different with agents, with players. But in principle, I would say that nothing is against this possibility. But sure, something to be considered if we have a real case like this, that I have my doubts by the Player Status Committee.
Thank you, Emilio, for picking up this good question from Roy. I think we have room for one or two quick questions as well. One is from Daniel Luiz. He is the legal counsel at Al Jazeera Club in United Arab Emirates. I can read it for you, Ronan, or you can put Daniel on the Zoom.
I'm going to try to connect him.
Yeah. Daniel, you are connected. If you can put your speaker on, we can hear you. Hello, Daniel, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Hello, hi.
Hi. It's
Please direct your question.
in the UAE, so it's yeah. So I'll be brief. So my question to you is, how can we define the just cause for the coaches? Can we consider?
Daniel, we have a problem with hearing you. We have a problem with hearing you. Maybe your question is already written. I can ask it for you so that Emilio and others can hear better. So the question of Daniel is, what would constitute a just cause to terminate the contract of the coach? Would the national laws of the country he's working in may be taken into consideration to define the just cause? Or can just cause be established if the coach is not applying or following the club's philosophy and way of playing football? That is the question from Daniel.
Yeah, I would say, Emin, if I may have the floor.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that I think just cause is always an open list of so. Obviously, there are just cause connected with financial terms, not compliance with the club, etc. But at the end of the day, it's an open list. When you say that, would the national law of the country taken into consideration? I would say it has to be taken into consideration, but I think that FIFA needs deciding bodies needs to be careful with that, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about an international dimension in this type of relationships, I think it's sometimes it could be difficult for the coach to exactly know which are his duties under the national law regulations and what could be considered a just cause under national regulations. So my suggestion in any case for the club would be to explicitly include in the contract all those, let's say, rules or I don't know, whatever duty the coach needs to be aware. So if it's not included in the contract, sometimes I think it would be difficult to defend then before FIFA. Regarding club philosophy or way of playing football, in my personal opinion, that should not be just cause resolution, because the way of playing football is something that has to be decided by the coach, and there should be a principle in which the coach is the only one responsible for deciding how to play. I would see it in the other way. If the club somehow interfere with the coach deciding position and try to influence his decision on who needs to play or which way we need to play, maybe I would say that this could be a just cause for the coach terminating the player. But I would say it's difficult to understand for me that this could be a right cause or just cause to terminate the contract. I don't know if you share this view.
Can I just say something minor? I guess the one responsible, we need also to take into consideration the sporting director of the club, who basically says guiding the lines of how things take place.
Yeah, maybe you should put your microphone closer. Cannot hear you well because of the sound behind you.
Okay. I am asking whether we need to take into consideration the technical director.
We can't hear you. Maybe you can write it later, and we will try to answer it. Rodrigo, in addition to your point, very recently I was in a panel at Couse, and there was this contractual relationship termination of a coach, a national team coach, and as a panel we have to decide whether there was a just cause based on respect to the cultural issues of that country he's working at. So that aspect, just cause, is a very wide range. You should be very precise on, directing it and, trying to evaluate it. We had a very hard time within the panel, but thanks to my colleagues at Couse, we finally reached an unanimous decision over there. So it has many aspects. Just one question I would like to direct. It is from Janez Pejovnik, and his question is, will there be a transfer period set also for the coaches the same they are for the players? Emilio, maybe you can answer this.
No, at this stage we are not considering to implement transfer windows for coaches. We have enough problems on the table to start working on the TMS for coaches, transfer windows, etc., etc. And obviously, as Rodrigo highlighted a few minutes ago, I think that, sometimes you can compare players and coaches, but sometimes, you cannot copy paste. So establishing transfer windows for coaches is something completely different than for players. So at this stage, we are not considering this potential possibility.
Thank you very much.
I would add there. And maybe Carol, you can explain us the reason why. But I was amazed as a Spanish lawyer that in England a coach can basically change from team to a competitor in the middle of the competition, and this is something that's not possible in Spain. And at the end of the day, I don't know if it's a concern for FIFA, or maybe it's national associations that should be concerned or not on this. But I was amazed with the fact that in England you can do that, because at the end of the day, I think you can really affect the competition if you, let's say, hire the other club who has possibilities to win the league. So I don't know what's the reasoning behind this rule, but I think that obviously it's not connected with somehow connected with transfer windows, but maybe some regulation on this might be advisable. Maybe not at a FIFA level, because maybe this does not affect. It's more a national level thing, but I think it's relevant to at least have a unified view on this.
It's funny, Rodrigo, because I was equally surprised about the position in Spain, that there would be that level of restriction that would prevent, you know, an employee from taking up employment somewhere else, because the market is so niche that if you were to effectively cut off a market for the managers, then from my perspective, that seems quite restrictive.
But just because the Spanish provision has never been tested in court. The day in which someone brings this dispute into the court, so let's see. But I think that there is a reason behind, obviously, and I see what Rodrigo says is integrity, no? So, you know, you are the coach of Tottenham, you know, going to Manchester City in December. So, but yeah, I dealt with this matter many times. At the Spanish FA, and they were always concerned about this provision, but for the moment it has never been tested in court in a serious way. But I think that there is a reason behind, to be honest.
Thank you, guys. I think we have a room only for one last question, and that may come from Melanie Scherer. If we can put her for this last question of the session.
Okay.
Yeah. If we cannot put her, I can ask her a question, but let's try.
Maybe you can ask the question, Emin.
Yeah, I will. Melanie asks that, what was FIFA's experience with the temporary exception that coaches do not have to pay an advance of procedural costs? Has the number of claims increased, and why were coaches as employees do not exempted from this obligation in the new Annex 8? And can coaches with low incomes apply for free legal aid? That's the question.
I can take the last one, Erika, and maybe you can explain the procedural ones. Well, at this stage, we don't have a system in place of legal aid for DRC or PSC proceedings. We are working on this, but we need money. But well, we are in good financial situation, and in the end, the money is money from clubs, players, coaches. So we are considering this, and we are also considering this in the context of the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So, you know, it's not only FIFA, it's also Couse. So, you know, from time to time, we are disappointed seeing players and coaches that cannot get access to the Couse, even against FIFA's decisions. So, you know, I don't care, we don't care. But, you know, there are some particular cases in which we think that, you know, either if the FIFA decision is right or wrong, we need to guarantee that they can go to a truly independent tribunal. No, of course, FIFA tribunals are independent, but, you know, I'm quoting here the Cascade law and the Swiss Federal Tribunal, so truly independent tribunals. And I think that it is our social responsibility to guarantee this. So we are working on this, and we had already exchanged some views with the Court of Arbitration for Sport. In this regard, we are working on this and hope that in 2021, beginning 2022 at the latest, we can announce something in the context of legal aid for players and coaches in football, no? Because the current legal aid program of CAS is very limited. The program does not cover the needs, but we would like to set up something more powerful for football matters. But at this stage, right now, there is no this possibility within FIFA proceedings, and the only possibility at CAS is the CAS legal aid program that, again, is limited due to dollars.
Thank you so much, Emilio. I think this is if none of us have any addition, this is okay for the coaches section. Or Erika, you have an addition?
Yeah, I was only going to answer for the first part of the question from Melanie regarding if we had an increase of cases because of non-applicability of procedural costs. I would say not really. We didn't have more cases, but definitely we had more grounds requests, because as you know, so currently procedural costs only apply for disputes before the player status committee, so coaches and clubs, not to employment-related disputes, and also in the ERC regarding training compensation and solidarity. And first of all, advance of costs and procedural costs were suspended between June and 31st December. So what we saw is that there were more grounds requests, because before, if a party would request the grounds, they would have to pay the procedural costs. And what we saw is that, again, I don't think it hinders coaches to come, because the advance of costs were not that high. But what we saw is that now in December, obviously, I think nobody likes to pay advance of costs. So we had, I think, a rush against the clock, because the costs came back on the 1st of January. So in December, we had a record amount of claims from coaches and also club. I guess parties were asking their lawyers to work during Christmas and New Year's Eve to avoid the payment of advance of costs and procedural costs. But all this is being analyzed, and with Emilio, we're always checking what is the next step and how we're going to see that in the future. I don't know if Emilio has anything to add on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And I think we can pass to the second session of our workshop, which is the female players. Emilio, I will again leave the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will share the screen again, just to introduce the topic. I have a few slides. Again, I think that we think that the most important point here is to open the Q&A session rather than going throughout the regulations. For sure, you have already downloaded the RSTP and also the additional materials that we added into legalfifa.com. Well, I have a couple of slides, 3 or 4 slides or 5 slides here. First of all is why we are developing or including minimum labor conditions for female players within the RSTP. So the clear answer is, well, it's a question of common sense, but it took a lot of time. We are in 2021, 1st January 2021, and for the first time, we are regulating certain aspects of the labor conditions of the female players. As everybody knows, so women's football is growing and growing and growing since a long time ago. The big success of the FIFA World Cup in Paris, in France, last year, 2019. Also, more and more we see, and we have just published the transfer report 2020 a few days ago. So, the number of transfer, also the US dollars involved in the transfer system, both are growing. So, women's football is a reality, and that's why, all together, and here I would like to thank especially FIFA. They were very supportive, working with us since the beginning on the project. Of course, World League Forum, clubs, confederations, but FIPRO was a real added value here. So trying to create a microsystem in order to protect something that it is pure natural, a man and a woman, so we have certain difference. And due to the fact that we are different, it cannot be that women are penalized for the natural situation, and they cannot continue at the same level their respective football careers. So here the main objective was to introduce minimum regulatory framework and focus on specific employment matters, mainly the maternity protections. Again, as we said with the coaches' regulations, the debate was long within the team. So with FIPRO, with ECA, with worldly forums, with the confederations. So of course we are very well aware that we can go beyond and we can produce even better regulations, but this is just the first step, and we are addressing here things that are particularly relevant for female players. That's something that I also emphasized during the Latino American session 2 days ago. So we are not doing this because we are facing problems. So, Erika can illustrate us better, but I cannot remember one single case before the DRC in which, we face problems like this. But first, it's a question of common sense. Sooner or later, due to the continuous growth of women's football, we will see problems, and we need to be prepared and ready and to have a proper and robust regulatory framework for these matters. And something that is even more important for FIFA and for all of us is that, okay, we are not facing these kind of problems on a regular basis before the DRC, due to the fact that the international transfer of women's players, female players, is not such high like male players. So problems are limited. Okay, but at domestic level, the situation is completely different. So we have seen, and we all know, problems all around the world. So what we are trying to do is to set minimum standards at worldwide level. So, what we are saying here is to the national associations is, when it comes to female football, women's football, I'm very sorry, but these principles are mandatory at domestic level. It's contrary to what we did with coaches. So, you need to implement the general principles. With women's football, the situation is completely different. So the principles, according to Article 1, Paragraph 3, I think, first letter of this article, the main principles are mandatory at worldwide level. And I think that this is the most important aspect of these regulations. Again, the regulations will create better conditions for international players, so a Spanish player playing in Argentina, an Argentinian player playing in France or in Vietnam. Okay, nice, but the most important and vital aspect of these regulations, at least from my personal understanding, is that as from 1st January 2021, with 6 months period in which the MAs can introduce these regulations, the general principles, the main principles, are also mandatory at worldwide level. And this is a very important message from our side to the national associations, and also to the real problems that some players, female players, are facing at domestic level. So again, for sure you have already read the provisions. So contrary to what we did with the coaches, coaches is Annex A, we decided to integrate these new minimum labor conditions into the RSTP. So, no creating an annex, because male and female players are football players. So we don't need an annex for female players. So female players are included into the RSTP. So as you know, first of all, and that's something that we have been working hard in order to find a solution, we created this maternity leave concept to be aligned with the International Labour Organization Convention and the international standards. And we defined the period with the obligation to pay a minimum salary during this period. also, you know, we guarantee some rights when the female player returns to work. Also, of course, some a specific protection during pregnancy. But if you ask me what we consider highly relevant within these new minimum labor conditions, at least if you ask me, I would say that there are two provisions. Maternity leave, of course, is important, but there are two provisions that I consider really important for the future. The first one is registration. So we are making an exception here, as we did with the unemployed player. So in order to allow female players to move out and back, and with this, they will not be penalized just for becoming mothers, no? So, you know, we are going to be extremely flexible, and I think that the article has been drafted in a very open way, an open-minded way, admitting players in, players out, if we have a maternity situation around. And then the second aspect is, you know, the special protection from dismissal for female players. And here something that I like very much is that, you know, of course, you know, if a female player is dismissed based on her pregnancy situation, maternity situation, so, you know, the club is obliged to compensate her with the salaries until the end of the contract, plus an additional amount of 6 months. And something that it is always very relevant, and we all know very well, is not only money, is, you know, the club is subject to sporting sanctions, so something like you know, transfer bans or things like this. So, and for me, this is a special protection that, of course, the female players deserve, and something that will at least will put the clubs in a difficult situation if, for whatever reasons, they are considering to dismiss a female player in this condition. So again, registration and this special protection from dismissal for female players are two relevant factors in the context of the new regulations. I also refer to the definition of maternity leave. You know, I think that we have a definition on the first pages of the definition number 30, maternity leave, a minimum period of 14 weeks paid absence grant to a female player due to her pregnancy, of which a minimum of 8 weeks must occur after the birth of the child. So again, here we are trying to be aligned with the international standards. We can do better, definitely. And also this with the compensation established in this definition number 30 of the RSTP. Also some rights that I already referred, also important, definitely important. Again, for me, registration and protection from dismissal is the most important factor. When it comes to the protection from dismissal, we have created this presumption that the termination occur as a result of a player being pregnant. So it's up to the club to break this presumption. And that's all, I think, from my side. Maybe we can move to the Q&A session. We had a very interesting debate with our Latin American friends concerning these new minimum conditions, labor conditions for female players. We expect exactly the same. But again, if I have to highlight something, I would say that first, we are trying to be ready when situations like this land on the table of the Player Status Committee or DRC definitely. But the most important thing here is that we are setting some international standards, mandatory standards, across all over the world. So that's all from our side. Either Erika or me, we are happy to take any kind of questions concerning this second topic. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you. Erika, do you have additions, or Carol will have some?
I would just add to what Emilio said in the beginning, that it's true, we haven't had a similar case with such discussion, and also surprisingly, we don't have many claims involving female players. And sometimes I think it's also not all of them are aware that we are, when we talk about player, we talk about male or female player, and we are competent to both of them. Because I also saw in the chat someone asking about solidarity and training compensation. And this is another thing that sometimes they don't realize there's already a protection. Solidarity mechanism does apply to any transfer, no matter if it's male or female player. So it's just to say that we are ready when it comes, but that surprisingly still we don't have many claims involving female players. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. Now, I'm sure Carol has a few words on this topic, right, Carol?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously it's a welcome introduction. There's minimum standards now introduced at a global level. We've started from a baseline of nothing, and so obviously FIFA has to be applauded for bringing this to the table, negotiating with the stakeholders. I think, as Emilio's referenced, it's probably quite a difficult process, isn't it? Because there are competing interests, and ultimately you reach a consensus and a compromise, and therefore this is a step in the right direction. But hopefully there's more to come. I think first of all it kind of flags up the elephant in the room, doesn't it? Women are anatomically equipped to give birth, men are not. The FIFA regulations have applied to both, and yet there was this sort of lacuna in the regulations, no reference to maternity or pregnancy. So I think just by the presence of these provisions, it sort of breaks a stigma. It's an acknowledgement that actually being an elite athlete and being a mom aren't mutually exclusive. And I think, as Erika has said, perhaps the publicity around this as well, it actually brings to the attention of female players that there is protection. They are covered by the FIFA regs, but there is specific protection for them. And I know there's been mention of there not having been many cases brought by players, but there's also evidence to show that that perhaps women have actually just left the game because they didn't feel that it was compatible to follow their career plus have a child. And I think that there's evidence in the FIFA Pro Global Employment Report to suggest that. And again, there was a report done in 2017. It showed like 1% of the WSL players had a child. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the WSL contracts, so that's the women's league contracts, Super League contracts in England, didn't have any provision for maternity. And so again, you hope that by the existence of these provisions, women will feel that they're protected. But I think actually dealing with the sort of specific protections, I know Emilia's referenced the contractual protection and almost the reversal of the burden of proof. So if a woman, if there's a termination of a contract whilst a woman is pregnant or on maternity, there's a presumption that that is a termination without just cause. And that's absolutely to be welcomed. There's the 6-month sort of penalty compensation in addition to the residual value of the contract. And I think that has to be an express acknowledgement, doesn't it? This is sexual discrimination at the end of the day. So there's a penalty provision, but I think given the relatively low value of women's salary, that this provision really had to have some teeth, didn't it? And again, Emilio said it's the sporting sanctions that I think the clubs are really going to be concerned about. And if they're faced with a 2-window transfer ban, domestically and internationally, then I think they will think twice about taking these steps. I know that the provision actually of 18 Kata 2 also refers to a woman exercising her maternity, I think, related rights. And I just wonder, what that may cover. You know, does it cover what are effectively feel like gaps in the regulations? Would it cover fertility treatment? Would it cover miscarriage? Would it cover postnatal depression? I suspect maybe not adoption or surrogacy, but there are areas, and I suspect it's because there wasn't scope to agree these points, but there are clearly gaps, you know, in the regulations there. And is this wording wide enough to cover those sorts of provisions? But I think my wider concern here is, I don't think within the industry there's necessarily the same level of contractual stability as there is within the men's game. I think FIFA's sort of transfer report, the 2020 transfer report, references that 70% of the players, female players that transferred in 2020 signed one-year contracts, and 90% of the transfers were out of contract players. And from, you know, my own experience advising, you know, high level female players, they're often on 2-year contracts, maybe 1-year contracts with 1-year options. And if you think logically, you know, you've got a gestation period of 9 months, you've then got a period of maternity leave for, you know, 2 or 3 months of maternity leave after that. It's feasible, isn't it, that these women are going to be out of contract by the time they want to return to the game. And that's not a termination of the contract, that's an expiry of the contract, or a non-exercise of an option. And where does that leave them? The contractual provisions, the regulatory protections are there, but in practice, are these women going to be left sort of exposed if they've had a period of maternity leave, they're out of contract, they haven't got match fitness, and then they've got to go and find another team? And I know the provision about, you know, getting a replacement player in and the player being able to come back outside of the transfer windows, but again, they can exercise these provisions within the term of their contract, and if they're out of contract at that point, then it sort of leave that protection redundant if ultimately that's the position. And I suspect there would be pushback on this, but, you know, is there a provision whereby contracts could be extended for a period of the maternity leave period, so that there is that contractual protection still? But yeah, a question for Emilio and Erika. And just another question on the provision about the contractual protection for termination. There's reference to CBAs being able to deviate from this protection, so this, you know, presumably the 6 months additional pay plus the residual term of the contract less any mitigation. I wondered why there wasn't reference to the CBA deviating from these provisions only if they provided for an enhanced position, because if the CBA provides for something worse than for the women, then again, is there some concern there? So that's what I'd say certainly on the contractual protections anyway.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Yeah, some of the questions have been discussed within the group. You know, particularly, you know, you raise a very important topic. So most of the contracts are just signed for 1 year. You know, this situation has an impact on these potential regulations and the goals that we are trying to achieve here. So we discussed about this particular topic within the group, and we are very well aware of this. So we were unable to find a solution for this at this stage, definitely. But again, it does not mean that we are trying to avoid the problem. And you know, the idea within the group is, let's put something in writing, again, mainly to protect domestic players rather than international players, just to tell our member associations, I'm sorry, but that's the time. The time is now, and you need to implement this at domestic level. And these are the minimum labor conditions. And then in the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years, we see how the system works, and maybe we can add some new features to the regulations. That's the idea. But concerning this particular point, we had long discussions about how to protect the female players better under these conditions. And that's something that most likely in the next version of Article 19 quota you will see. But again, subject to the agreement with the colleagues from the other groups.
And in your opinion, do you consider that the maternity-related rights could extend?
You mean the paternity leave?
Well, I don't know. So say if a woman was going for fertility treatment or adoption, is that a maternity-related right?
We also discussed about this adoption. At this stage, we think that it is not covered, but we discuss about this. And also we discuss about extending the rights to the paternity leave, So, and we also discussed this during our Latin American session. So I tend to say that at this stage it is not covered, but again, we discuss about these matters within the group. But I cannot exclude, or we cannot exclude that the decision of the DRC, by the way, an organ composed by representative of clubs and players. So, we tend to see the DRC as a FIFA body. So FIFA says, but the reality is not FIFA, it's the clubs and the players. They say that. So, but we cannot exclude that the DRC can reach a slightly different view here. So it's up to you within the DRC now to interpret the provisions. We are trying to do our best, and let's see how it evolves.
If I may take one of the questions or comments from Caro as well. I think one side is exactly this, that the same as for coaches, the idea was to establish a minimum requirement, minimum legal framework. And then from there, I'm sure the jurisprudence will develop. As you know, we prepare the cases, but are the members of the DRC taking decision. So I'm sure that we'll see a development on that. And again, we could not cover all scenarios. So the idea was to have the minimum legal framework there. Regarding the collective bargaining agreements, Carol, it's not only there. If you look also Article 17, 18, we had other parts where in agreement with stakeholders, it is saying that we always respect the wish of the parties. And if there is a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, validly negotiated by the employers and employees, so we always, of course, a requirement that is negotiated by FIFPro or the National Players Union and the clubs. If then they agree in something else, we need to respect that. So basically, it's not something different for women, but it's valid for throughout RSTP. You see that reference. And finally, regarding the 6 months that you have and the reverse burden of proof, I think this is a good protection, although of course you're going to have the practice and the how high or not the salaries you are, but I think it's important to see there is a difference already, and it's more protective than for breach of contract for players in general, because there you have the maximum amount of the residual value. So even with the additional compensation, you cannot go over the residual value. And for female players in this case, it's on top of it. So slowly we're guaranteeing this and acknowledging the differences and the specificity of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Erika. Do you have any additions, Carol, to this?
Yeah, I wanted to just focus a bit on the actual practical aspects of how the female players are treated sort of during pregnancy and following maternity leave. And so that's dealt with in 18 Chapter 4. And it provides for players to be able to continue to play and train effectively throughout the course of their pregnancy, provided they get independent medical advice to say it's safe to do so, and that a club has to respect the right of a female player to decide that. But I just wondered, what the situation might be, and it's just a hypothetical one, but notwithstanding independent medical advice to say this woman's pregnancy isn't high risk, she's young, fit, healthy, but then she goes on to have a bad tackle or a fall, and as a result of that miscarries, or the baby is damaged, where would the liability then lie? The insurance protections in this sort of scenario opens up sort of a can of worms, and I wonder whether that was sort of discussed when you were talking about these sorts of provisions. And then I guess the flip side is, obviously, if either there is medical advice to say that the player shouldn't continue to train and play, or the player decides that she doesn't want to, again, the club has to respect those rights and look to find an alternative employment. And I guess, as Erika's mentioned before, the jurisprudence is probably going to develop on this, but the devil is in the detail. What is an alternative? Does it have to be a sort of reasonable alternative? If the player wants a coaching role, or something with physical training, but the owner offer on the table is sort of an administrative role, is the player then obliged to accept that? What I suppose will the club say if the player actually says, I don't want to do a physical role, I want to do an administrative role, and their obligation is to pay her full salary until maternity leave, and yet they're paying the player's salary for someone doing an administrative role. And I suppose the other sort of related issue was, clearly clubs have a duty, sort of health and safety duties towards their employees, and there's no provision for players to have to notify the club of when they are pregnant. And again, I just wonder whether what the discussions might have been around that, because is there sort of an acknowledgement that actually in a training room and a sort of dressing room type environment, someone's not going to get away with being 8 months pregnant and no one's going to notice, that actually the practicalities of it are that, people will notice. And secondly, the players are probably going to be concerned about, training and playing and what they're able to do whilst pregnant. But I just wondered, at what point does the club's duty kick in, because they're not going to be on notice of a pregnancy until they're informed, and if they're not informed until a late stage in the pregnancy, then does that not make the situation more difficult for the clubs? So a few questions there.
Erika, would you like to take some of these questions? You're mute.
Okay, so I guess, as Emilio said, there are many discussions on the table, but I think because there were no regulatory framework, the main concern was what is the minimum guarantees that we need to establish for especially to be applicable on national level. So as far as I'm concerned, I haven't been in all the discussions like Emilio has, but we didn't go into that much detail. And again, I think it's going to be a matter of the same as in any other employment-related dispute. It's up to the parties to demonstrate. So even if you don't put that, you need to notify. I think it comes with that. If you're going to put a claim and saying they did not comply with the obligation according to the article, they need to demonstrate that they had notified the club, and in the same otherwise. No? So I think because of the practice that our proceedings is in writing, and you need all the information, that obviously they would need to somehow demonstrate that either the obligation was complied with or not. But then again, I think they're all going to be depending on the work of the lawyers representing the players, of them knowing, and the clubs as well, and it's going to be a development of jurisprudence. For now, it's a bit difficult to foresee how that's going to develop. I don't know if Emilio has a different opinion on that one, but mainly I think the idea was to establish the minimum regulatory framework and then go from there. I think it will be very difficult to really foresee all the different scenarios and what can happen during pregnancy and when it's going to be notified. So I think it didn't go to that level of specificity.
I guess with regard to the replacement of players whilst they've been on maternity leave as well, is it envisaged that could there be loans of these sort of substitute players, or is this effectively an exception to the rule and there's their contracts are ultimately going to be very short-term permanent contracts? And I suppose in a practical sense, I just wonder how many female players will be willing to be those sort of substitute players, because the terms of those contracts are going to be pretty limited. And yeah. I wonder how we got to that point.
Totally right. Yeah, totally right. And we also discussed this particular issue 2 days ago. But at this stage, is the only way to protect mainly the maternity leave situation. So by allowing the player to go out and to go back, so when she feels comfortable. So it's the only solution that we found at this stage. No, but you are totally right. So maybe the clubs will not be able to find players for such a small period. But well, let's see how it evolves. But again, that's something that we also discussed 2 days ago, and that's a valid point, obviously.
And I guess whether it's going to be a short contract or a loan, as you said, I think it is up to the parties to find the best solution they can. As more FIFA enabling the possibility of doing this registration outside the registration period and making sure that the club can try to replace the player during that time.
Thank you all very much. Let me check out the Q&A section, just 1 second. We have a question from Rafael Schroeder, but taking into consideration these new amendments and the increase of transfers in women's football, are you considered to include TC and CM into women's football? I think it's answered, Erika.
It was half answered. So what I said is that solidarity mechanism, it does apply and is already the case. So it's 5% of any transfer, and it doesn't matter if it's a female player or a male player. Training compensation, on the other hand, currently according to the regulations, it does not apply to futsal or female football. This is something that is always under discussion, and there's a task force for women football currently discussion what would be the best solution, because this I can remember because it was actually the first case, I think it was 2011, and I was actually the case handler when there was a first case for training compensation for women players. And at that moment we had a huge research to see what would be the best solution, what if it would be applying the same system as for men, but a percentage, calculating the actual incurring costs for that club. So we did a whole research. And often, as Emilio said, we have the DRC, which is composed by club representative and player representative and a chairman. And most of the times they have heated discussions. And I think for once it was everybody in unison saying, when we presented the case, saying, if we granted training compensation now in 2011, we're going to queue any transfer in women football. Because at that moment in time, the level of professionalism in women football was not equal around the world. I think we have greatly evolved and is a professional now, but still there are a lot of differences. And in the task force, the main discussion now is saying, we cannot compare, it's not the same. So we need to try to find a similar a training compensation system, a training reward system that really makes sense for women football. At the same time, as you know, currently in the transfer reform, we're also discussing training compensation, solidarity mechanism, and whether or not to continue the same system or find a new one. So I think this question will be answered in due time once we review the transfer reform system. For currently, solidarity mechanism, yes, apply, training compensation, not.
Thank you, Erika. Let me check if we have another question. Yes, one question from Ahmad bin Quittin from Saudi Arabia, I guess. No, correction. This is from Turkey, actually, but the name is different in Zoom. This is from Abdülkadir Güzeloğlu. And the question is, as monitoring and preserving standards that involve women require constant action and initiative of policymakers and regulators due to general tendency to limit earned rights of women, whether directly or implicitly, is there a future policy within FIFA to set up or advise establishment of mandatory dedicated bodies to protect women's rights within member association? The question is this.
Well, I think that we don't need to set up a specific bodies to protect women's rights. So, you know, what we need is to add more women's into the existing bodies, no? Definitely, you know, we are not perfect, but we have done a lot. So, you know, with women's in all our committees, also the FIFA Council, so, you know, the FIFA General Secretary, so, you know, the CEO of the company, the CEO of FIFA is Fatma Zamora. So, you know, more and more we see chiefs, directors, head of. So, you know, for me, but just my personal opinion, we don't need a dedicated subcommittee or standing committee for women's. What we need is to empower women's into the respective positions. No, again, most likely we are far from being perfect, but in terms of employees, if I'm not wrong, Erika is 50-50 here at FIFA. So in terms of leading positions, it's not 50-50, but at least you have the general secretary that she controls everything. So, you know, and then we have some chiefs, some directors, some head of. So again, wouldn't like to say we are a model, but I think that over the last 3 or 4 years, we have done a lot in this context, but we still need to work this. But again, my line manager is a woman, a brave and dedicated woman. So I'm super happy, very happy to report to her, no? Because she's an inspiration from all of us, and she's the CEO of the company. So, and it's football. So, and she's coming from Africa, no? So, and she's leading the company with the president, no? So, yeah, things are changing, maybe not too very fast, particularly in football, no, due to the ecosystem. But sooner or later, the next generation, you know, when I see my kids and I see Alvaro playing football, so, you know, the next generation will be governed by women. Means that the world will be a better place to live, I'm sure. A little bit difficult sometimes, but definitely a better place to live.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emilio. Well, guys, I think we have a very precise and neat workshop in the English session. We have only 2 minutes left for winding up this workshop. So thanks to Emilio. Thank you very much for taking your time, giving your time here. Erika, thank you so much as well. In your tight schedule, you put IF in. And Rodrigo, Carol, thank you for your contributions a lot. Now I will also like to thank the audience who listened to us for around 2 hours. Thank you all participants a lot. Before finishing, I will like to give the floor to Patricia, our president, to say our last words as IF. Thank you.
Yes, I think that as Emilio said, we all are responsible of improving the empowerment of female women. And I think that through this regulation for female players, FIFA is exemplary. And FIFA is exemplary and is exemplary, as we've seen, because you have a lot of women, and it's very important for us as a woman. And FIFA is exemplary also because you know, and you may know that in our countries, all countries, our federation are not exemplary at all, not at all. So more women in commissions, more women in the DRC, more women in the administration, more women on the field, more little girls playing football. This is very important, more diversity. And maybe the next step could be that as minimum standards, FIFA would impose national association to have more diversity. I don't like quota, because quota is difficult for us as a woman, but sometimes it's the only way to open the door to the women to have quota. So I would like to thank you all. I'm very happy to have so many women, but you should know that also for AIAF, it's sometimes difficult to have women on board as women lawyers. So we encourage a lot young women and to come and join us. So thank you very much, Emilio. Thank you, Erika. Thank you, Carol, Emin, and Rodrigo. Thank you also, Ronan, for organizing this wonderful workshop. Just one word for our members, or those who are not members. If you have any comment, if you like this workshop, if you like the format, or if you have other idea how we can, because we want to improve this, more debate, more participation. So if you have ideas or suggestions, do not hesitate. And for all AIAF members, if you have ideas about what should be the topics of our next workshop, also all ideas are welcome. We have a new executive committee. Yesterday, 2 days ago, we had a fantastic Spanish session with our colleagues Horacio, Reyes, and it was also, we showed that in each part of the world, there are a lot of lawyers who like and want to improve and participate. So I encourage also the lawyers from other parts of the world. I was so happy to have lawyers from Middle East, lawyers from Asia, lawyers from Africa attending this workshop. So let's continue and work together. Thank you very much, and good night, good afternoon for those who are, or good evening for those who are later on.
Patricia, if we may add, this workshop will be put on YouTube for everyone to watch later. And I urge everyone to follow AIAF social media platforms at Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn, so that you can get up to date about what AIAF is up to. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Emilio. Thank you, Erika.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ronan.
Salut Ronan. Au revoir Emin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Salut à tous. Bye bye.
Bye bye Jules.
Bye Jules.
Bye.